Bob McKenzie is joining me now for Our Line Starts to talk about the big news of the day, the firing of Toronto Maple Leafs head coach Mike Babcock. Let's hear what team president Brendan Shanahan had to say.
It wasn't an easy conversation to have, and it wasn't pleasant. Days like today are not, but it was what we felt was important for the club, and something, once you realize that there's something that you should do and have to do, then it's best to act on it. It really just came down to the last couple of weeks, and it got to the point where, we spoke in the last 48 hours, and again, I just felt that it was something that needed to be done, and Kyle felt the same way. So seeing as I had been the one that hired Mike, I thought that it was very important for me to get on a plane this morning and fly here and face Mike and be with Kyle to tell him myself that we had made a decision together that we thought was in the best interest of the club.
So, Bob, what exactly was around the basis of the timing of this? Why now, and what do you make of it?
The timing surprised me a little bit, insofar as the Leafs are in the middle of a road trip. They had that terrible game on Saturday night, and they lost 6-1 to the Pittsburgh Penguins. And they didn't just lose. It was as if they rolled over and played dead. And that was the first time you felt like, you know what? Mike Babcock getting fired by the Toronto Maple Leafs might well be inevitable, but we didn't think it would happen then because they were jetting off to Las Vegas, and then they played better against Vegas and lost, and everybody assumed, well, you know what, they're going to play in Arizona on Thursday, Colorado on Saturday. If they're going to fire Mike Babcock, it's more likely to happen when they get back home before they hit Detroit the middle of next week. So the surprise, the timing in terms of it being today was a little bit surprising. But this is something that's been speculated on for a while. And I think those who know Mike Babcock would suggest, you know what, this actually all started the day Lou Lamoriello ceased to be the general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs and Kyle Dubis took over. Dubis is a new general manager. He's got certain ideas on how the team should play, how a team should be constructed. And Mike Babcock definitely has ideas on how a team should be coached and how it should play. And I'm not sure the two were fully on the same page, although I think they both gave it the old college try to try and make it happen. The Leaf season is spiraling out of control. They are very close to being totally out of it. They've not played well. They played more games than almost any team in the National Hockey League, and their point percentage is right amongst the very worst in the Eastern Conference. They're in real danger of not making the playoffs, and I think that ultimately was why Brendan Shanahan flew from Toronto to Arizona today with Kyle Dubis and told Mike Babcock, you're gone. And Sheldon Keefe, a guy who is more simpatico with Kyle Dubis, is now the new head coach.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of reading between the lines here with what you're saying. I mean, was there a bit of a rift between Kyle Dubis and Mike Babcock, a philosophical rift?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. And as I said, listen, I don't believe, there's a lot of Leaf fans thought the year started out and they're saying, you know what, Babcock's on a really short leash. Dubis is going to look for the very first chance he's got to fire him. And I don't believe that's the case because I think organizationally, even quite aside from Kyle Dubis, I mean, there's more than 6 million reasons a year why you don't want to fire Mike Babcock. He's got 3 more years on his contract after this season. He's going to make over $6 million per year in each of those years. So that's a lot of money to be paying a guy you don't want to coach your team. But it is the Toronto Maple Leafs, and they've got a money-making machine, a money-printing machine in the basement. So, yeah, were they on the same page? I think they tried to be. I don't know that they necessarily were. I can tell you this, that Kyle Dubis and Sheldon Keefe, the new head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs, who has no NHL coaching experience, none whatsoever, never been a head coach, never been an assistant coach in the National Hockey League, and yet has been ultra successful with the American League Marlies and coached for Dubis in junior in Sault Ste. Marie. They are like-minded in terms of how the game is played. Speed, offense, quick transition, don't spend time in your own end. And Babcock, of course, was a defense-first guy. And a lot of people think that the problems were rooted because Babcock was trying to coach a skill and speed team to be the 1-0, 2-1 shutdown team that they weren't. And Babcock and his camp would suggest, you know what, the way this team's constructed, it's not a formula to win in the National Hockey League, especially when we've seen St. Louis and Washington win the Stanley Cup with a real heavy game to go with the speed and skill.
So Jonesy earlier in the podcast was talking about how the players more than likely stopped playing for Mike Babcock, that this is probably where this really reached a boiling point where it was time for Babcock to go. How much blame do you put on the Austin Matthews, the Mitch Marners, the Nylanders of this group, the superstars that are making a lot of money not playing that system right now?
Well, I think there's a huge shared responsibility. You know, Kyle Dubis didn't give Mike Babcock a very good backup goaltender to work with. Now, Mike Babcock's got a manner in which he coaches backup goaltenders, and his utilization of backup goaltenders, it sets the bar up here for a backup goaltender, as opposed to most teams will just spot a guy in here. Mike Babcock basically only plays his backup on the second half of back-to-backs, and Freddie Anderson gets the easier first night against softer competition, and the backup gets the harder second game. So that was an issue. So Dubis has got some criticism here, and the players most certainly. They have not played well. Austin Matthews has ridiculous numbers. Very good. Like, he's on pace for 50-plus goals. Before Mitch Marner was sidelined with his high ankle sprain, he was on pace for 100-plus points. And in Toronto, people are looking at them and saying they're not playing very well. Very inconsistent. And the team did not play very good defense for Mike Babcock. And again, some people who support Mike Babcock would say it's not a very good defense. They didn't give him enough to work with. But the players absolutely take responsibility here. And honestly, I mean, I don't think the players love Mike Babcock, but people would say the players didn't love Scotty Bowman either when they played. They loved him when they were lifting the Stanley Cup. And in this instance, players are different today, maybe. I think it's harder to coach younger players today if you're using the old school values that Mike Babcock would put a premium on. So I think there's plenty of blame to go around, and obviously Babcock too. Had an opportunity with a pretty good hockey team, and he wasn't able to build on what they did last year.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the pressure of coaching a young team loaded with talent, but also the pressure of coaching in Toronto. And I know if it's one guy that could do it, it would be Mike Babcock with the experience he has and the pedigree he has. But, you know, Bob, I'm curious, like, I mean, you live up there. I was up there working for a number of years. It is a different beast up there when you're talking about hockey and the Toronto Maple Leafs. What is the mood right now around what happened, the reaction to the firing, and also how much did that city and the response of the media and the attention and the scrutiny that the organization was getting come into play here? I don't think that the fan reaction and general level of dissatisfaction with the hockey club, which is very high right now, I don't think that was a factor. I really think what the factor is they saw the Leafs playing all these games and their point percentage totals being just horrendous. And they're thinking to themselves, we're going to miss the playoffs this year. And I think that's why this happened on this particular day, because they're looking at Thursday night against Arizona and Saturday night against Colorado and saying, we got to do something here, because if we don't do something, if we don't get a response quickly from our players, we're not going to make the playoffs, and that's unacceptable. In terms of the marketplace, you know, a few years ago, the Leafs made the playoffs, and everybody was like, yeah, because it had been so long, and people were excited. And they met Washington in the first round, and they played extremely well against the Washington Capitals, lost in 6 games or whatever it was. But everybody was like, that's it. They're on their way. Matthews, Marner, Nylander, all these great young players. And then 2 years ago, they had another great season. They had even better regular season, and they lost in Game 7 to the Boston Bruins. But that was okay, because people could rationalize it and say, yeah, but you know what? That's not going to happen every year. We're going to get better. It's going to be so much better when these players mature, and we're on our way, and we're going to be a contender now. And then this is where management made a big decision. Signed John Tavares to his $11 million contract. That accelerated the plan in terms of, we're not waiting for Marner, Matthews, and Nylander to be 25 before we're ready to contend. We're bringing Tavares in, and we're ready to go now. And bringing him in at $11 million, Marner, Matthews, those guys, they're looking at it and saying, $11 million for him. We're the young players on this team, homegrown talent. We want that kind of money too. And that created a cap crunch. So that, quite aside from that, but the fans' expectation after last year, when they lost again in Game 7 in a 100-plus point season, that's where bitter disappointment came in. And then when Marner asked for big money and got it this summer, when Matthews got his big contract last summer, Tavares has got his big contract, Nylander got his big contract, and the fans in Toronto are like, okay, enough with the Game 7 losses to the Bruins, enough with
100-point seasons and going out in the first round of the playoffs. Enough with Mike Babcock. When was the last time you won a playoff round, bud?
Yeah.
Enough with Kyle Dubis. Hey, you're a new general manager. You know, why is our defense not good enough? So suddenly a market that had been pretty passive in terms of criticism or holding them to a high standard suddenly got a little owly and a little squirrely. And this season, I mean, right from the get-go, they haven't been very good. And their power play is terrible, and their defense is terrible. And the fans are letting them hear about it every day. So, yeah, it's a pretty negative atmosphere in Toronto right now.
All right. Well, we'll see what Sheldon Keefe can do with this group. And we'll have to pay attention to those games this weekend. Arizona, Colorado, the road ahead for the
Yeah, I did. They came in with a big bag of money. Mike Milbury just asking if I'm getting paid. Of course I am. I lost my amateur status a long time ago.
Mike does not.
They said Mike doesn't get paid, but you do. So.
There you go. Well, we're happy you joined us, paid or unpaid, whatever it will be. We'll keep that a mystery. Thanks, Bob. And thanks to everyone for tuning into another episode of Our Line Starts. You can subscribe for automatic downloads wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll be happy to see you next time.